in the country.
Good evening. I'm Julie Haener. For the second time this week, the San Jose Police Department is mourning the loss of one of its own. Earlier this week, an officer piloting a police helicopter died in a crash. Now, a 22-year department veteran is dead following an off-duty traffic accident. John Sasaki joins us from San Jose with this report. John.
Julie, San Jose's police officers were recovering from the death of one of their comrades when they found out another died yesterday. This time it was the tremendously popular Sergeant Gordon Fujino. The 44-year-old SWAT team member and training officer died in a car accident on Monterey Highway. Tonight, his fellow officers described him as a cop's cop, a devoted father, and said he was always ready to joke around and lend a hand.
He was a training sergeant, and even when I was brand new, he would kind of take you under his wing and, you know, just show you the ropes, and never treated anybody differently, you know, whether they were brand new or been on 30 years.
Always had time for everybody. It didn't matter who, and everybody knows him. He was just one of the most popular guys here.
First and foremost, that's what Gordon was as a father. You know, he was extremely devoted to his two daughters, and, you know, they were his life, and I know they're going to miss him dearly.
Fujino attended yesterday's funeral for Officer Desmond Casey, who died in the police helicopter crash on Monday.
Gordy worked the midnight shift, so he'd worked the night before, worked all night, and then in the morning he stayed around, went to the funeral. After that, in the afternoon, he was going to go pick up the girls and I think take them to their mother, and then he was going to turn around and come back. So it would have been, you know, no sleep, another day, and on his way down to pick up the girls is when the accident happened.
It was just before 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon that Fujino's car slammed into 4 other cars that were stopped at a red light at the corner of Monterey Highway and Live Oak Avenue. Fujino died at the scene. Another driver suffered major neck injuries and had to be airlifted to San Jose Medical Center. Investigators have not yet determined what caused the accident. It is clear that this has been one of the worst weeks ever for the San Jose police.
Even if Desmond hadn't died, we would still be shocked and really upset by Gordy. You know, so to me, it's just as bad either way. They're both great people, and it's a shame that we lost both of them.
Officers were set to remove the black mourning bands from their badges today, the day after Desmond Casey's funeral. Now they say they'll keep them on until after Gordon Fujino's funeral. Arrangements for a service are reportedly still in the works. Julie.
All right, John Sasaki. Thank you, John. A bank robbery suspect is behind bars in the South Bay tonight after a police chase and standoff that lasted for much of the afternoon. Tonight, a quick-thinking sheriff's deputy is being credited for catching the suspect. That deputy says he noticed the man because he was wearing a winter jacket in hot weather. The hunch quickly turned into a chase after he remembered a bulletin concerning recent bank robberies. Vern Hawkins has this report.
The chase by several police cars lasted about an hour through parts of the East and South Bay and went something like this.
Numerous agencies assisted in the pursuit. Go from Cupertino on to 280. We're getting on the 680 and through Milpitas, back on the 680, back towards San Jose. I believe speeds reached up to about 80 plus.
Police said the black SUV rammed 2 highway patrol cars during the chase before crashing into this driveway on San Carlos Street near San Jose State University. The driver ran from the car, and the search on foot began.
I saw him jump the fence, and a cop chased after him, and that was it.
Some 50 officers surrounded the area around 14th and San Carlos, keeping traffic and pedestrians away, and residents inside, including this woman who needed dialysis treatment.
The time was getting late.
Well, I don't know.
I'm nervous.
By now, police believe the man had robbed the Cal Fed Bank in Cupertino, had used a handgun and herded employees into a vault, similar to other robberies here.
Same modus operandi, but whether he's the exact same person, we're still looking. We have to look into that.
Police say when 2 officers responded to a 911 call at the bank, it was the black SUV that tipped them off.
From previous memos or previous bulletins that were given out, he knew that there was a black SUV that's been involved in some 211. So he sees somebody coming out from the front of the bank wearing a dark ski jacket all the way up to his face.
They began to follow the man, who apparently took them on a chase that ended at his mother's house.
Come on, she's got to come out. He's in my house.
Several blocks of the area was sealed off for some 3 hours until San Jose police negotiated his surrender. At 2 this afternoon, 30-year-old Mac Henry Rogers Jr. was taken into custody. No shots were fired and no one was injured. Officers say they think he may be responsible for several bank robberies in the South Bay. In San Jose, Vern Hawkins for the 10 o'clock news.
San Francisco's mayoral candidates hit the streets today to drum up support on this, the final weekend before next Tuesday's election. The latest KTVU San Francisco Examiner poll taken this week shows incumbent Willie Brown with a comfortable lead. But none of the candidates has a majority, and the real race is for second place and a spot in a runoff with Brown. Lisa Carton reports.
It's billboards like these, plastered on street poles all across San Francisco, that reminds residents there's a race on for the top seat in City Hall. Today, the last weekend before the big vote, the top 4 candidates took to the streets.
Isn't this fabulous? For once, I feel there's hope.
In a grassroots effort for support, Board of Supervisors President Tom Ammiano kicked off the day with a rally in the Castro district. Enthusiasm has been building for Ammiano since he filed papers for a write-in candidacy 17 days ago.
I think what was happening is a sense of real lack of energy around the election up until about 2 weeks ago, and now all I feel is energy. It's very empowering, and I think a lot of people just felt that distance from the electoral process. And this is direct involvement, it's hands-on, people get to know each other, they get to know the candidate, and I think it's one of the greatest things about the democratic process.
Across town in the Excelsior district, the spotlight was on the incumbent as he dedicated a newly renovated basketball court. The mayor made his case for keeping his job.
This place was in shambles. I mean, total shambles. The budget was unbalanced. It was a deficit. I mean, it was just a bad place. We've turned all of that around. So now the competition is over. Who will manage this prosperity? Who will manage the good times? And I think the guy that cleaned up the place ought to be given the opportunity to manage the good times.
And in a more sedate tone, former political consultant and millionaire Clint Reilly, along with wife Janet and daughter Jill, chose the Embarcadero Farmers Market to meet and greet. Reilly has criticized Brown's lack of attention to Muni and the homeless problem.
He said he would fix Muni in 100 days and solve the homeless problem, but of course he hasn't. I've proposed a plan to fix Muni, mailed it to every voter in the city. I've also done a detailed plan on how we can reduce the size of the homeless problem and make progress on this most vexing problem that's facing our city today.
Frank Jordan, nice to meet you. Hi.
Hi.
Pleasure, nice to meet you too.
Frank Jordan walked the Marina District today. The former mayor and police chief says he thinks he has a real chance to face Willie Brown in a runoff election, and he says he's sticking to the top issues.
The number 1 issue, is, as you know, is homeless, but number 2 issue now is affordable housing. The problem we have today is that you have tremendous building and development and growth, and you have creating jobs are creating by the thousands in San Francisco, but the one thing that there's a crunch and the stress and pressure is not enough affordable housing.
All of the candidates are after the undecided vote this weekend. The latest KTVU poll shows 27% of the voters still don't know who they will vote for. Overspending, homelessness, and improved public transit seem to be issues that are front and center with the voters. So who will lead San Francisco's diverse population into the 21st century? Voters cast their ballots on Tuesday. In San Francisco, Lisa Carton for the 10 o'clock news.
Vice President Al Gore's lead in the Democratic presidential race may be slipping. That's according to the latest Newsweek poll of registered voters. The survey shows only a 15% difference between Gore and his Democratic rival, Bill Bradley. Gore dropped from 46% last week to 40% this week, while Bradley dropped just 1 percentage point. Bradley also fared slightly better in a scenario pitting the Democrats against the likely Republican nominee, George W. Bush. The poll has a margin of error of plus or minus 4%. The President and First Lady joined more than half the U.S. Senate today to pay their final respects to Rhode Island Senator John Chafee. The bipartisan tribute was one of the largest turnouts of national figures for the funeral of a U.S. Senator. Chafee was one of the last moderate Republicans in the Senate, and he was well-liked and respected for his ability to set aside political differences.
Gung-ho leaps to mind. Now, my dictionary defines this as extremely enthusiastic and dedicated, but goes on to note that this World War II Marine Corps motto derives from a Chinese word meaning work together. Work together. Wasn't that motto a guiding light for my father's entire public service?
Chafee served as a senator of Rhode Island for 23 years and planned to retire after this term. He died last Sunday from heart failure at the age of 77. We have much more still ahead on tonight's 10 o'clock news. More than 1 million over the past 20 years and the growing impatience of San Francisco residents. Tonight, some hard questions. Is the city doing enough to help the homeless? Or, as some charge, is it doing too much? Mark Curtis has tonight's report.
Night after night, they line the sidewalks by the dozens and by the thousands. One by one, they form a seemingly endless chain of human misery, connected only in their efforts to keep warm, to sleep, or simply to survive another night in the streets.
Time to go and lay down.
Donald Turner is among those fighting to get by. At 38, he's been homeless on and off since he ran away from home in Dayton, Ohio at age 12.
My life at home was not very pleasant.
So, he took up residence in a dumpster.
The dumpster was my home. It was where I first learned how being on my own was going to be. It was going to be lonely.
Donald spends each night sleeping alone on a bench outside a fast food restaurant not far from City Hall. But he is hardly alone in his problem. City officials and advocates for the homeless estimate the homeless population in San Francisco at anywhere from 10 to 16,000. To help, there are more than 100 separate agencies trying to aid them with everything from food to clothing to health care to money. But critics such as Earl Murray of Coal Valley say that is actually making the problem worse. To him, the social services agencies are really more interested in keeping themselves in business and not solving the homeless problem.
I would like to just correct things. I want to get the social services mafia the hell out of here so you don't have all these bums around here. They bring them in because they get so much money per bum.
But that attitude offends those who are trying to help the homeless. Randy Shaw runs the Tenderloin Task Force, and he says no one is trying to profit on the plight of the needy.
Those who call about a homeless industry are really uninformed, because I can show you the wage levels of all the nonprofits who work in homeless services. They're about half that of city workers, half that.
Still, whether it's a cottage industry or not, the city of San Francisco now spends almost $80 million a year on the homeless. Private charities and nonprofits spend another $20 million. With all that money, many wonder why the problem still exists. The homeless problem has become something of an endless tug of war here in San Francisco. The various factions involved can't even agree on why the problem is so severe, and because of that, there is little agreement on how to fix it. Some homeless advocates say that what it will take, simply put, is homes, specifically 10,000 new low-income housing units.
In reality, to resolve homelessness, you have to spend money on affordable housing. Because no matter how much you spend on treatment programs, medical programs, people will still be homeless if they don't have a place to live.
But paying for new housing remains a huge obstacle. Officials with the mayor's office on homelessness say San Francisco can't afford to foot the bill alone. They want surrounding counties to help.
You know, we're not going to build our way out of this problem with housing. We can have as many services as we want. But until we get the other counties on board, until we come up with a strategic plan that's going to benefit all of us, I think we're still going to be presented with these type of problems.
But critics say a lot of money spent on the homeless is being wasted. Former Human Services Commissioner Earl Rynerson says giving out cash as general assistance is a disaster.
The cash that we're providing to people on top of all the services has become nothing more than a drug and alcohol allowance. So these individuals who we're trying to help, we're actually harming them by keeping them out on the streets as addicts.
Ironically, as we conducted this interview, a 29-year-old homeless woman in the background was using illegal drugs.
We, right here in broad daylight, just watched some people shoot up heroin, right in broad daylight here in the alley. I mean,
isn't that amazing?
What's your reaction to that?
It's sad. It's really sad.
Spare a cigarette. Spare a cigarette.
Spare change, please.
The drug and housing issues aside, there are those who think cutting off benefits and forcing the homeless to work is the answer.
No, there's jobs around for these kids. Now they can get off their dead rear ends and do something.
But homeless people such as Donald Turner disagree. But a lot of people would say there's plenty of jobs out there. Unemployment's very low. They say you can find a job and get off the streets if you really tried.
No, you can't.
Why not?
Because when you go in these offices, they're looking at one thing, how you're dressed. If you don't have on the right clothes or had the right appearance, I can go through an interview and still not get a job.
For now, a solution to the homeless problem appears far off. Despite the bleak conditions and bureaucratic gridlock, Donald Turner says amid the despair, there is still hope.
Some people treat me less than human, but inside myself, I know I'm not less than human, because as long as I can wake up every morning and see that sun rising, I know that I got another day and another chance to try to get up off the street.
I thought that in light of